The punch was never supposed to land. That was the lie the Galactic Collegium would later tell itself, anyway. That it was a misunderstanding. A clash of cultures. A tragic failure of interspecies etiquette. But the truth was simpler. Someone pushed a human, and the galaxy blinked first. Combat Theory Hall 7 was designed to survive riots. Reinforced alloy walls. Gravity stabilizers. Desks bolted directly into the deck to accommodate creatures whose resting mass exceeded armored vehicles. The Collegium liked to boast that no violence had ever escalated beyond broken limbs inside its halls. That record died on a quiet instructional cycle with 67 cadets present, and 1 human. Cadet Elias Ward sat in the 3rd row from the back, posture loose, boots planted, hands resting on the desk like he had nowhere else to be. His uniform was regulation clean, but it hung on him differently than it did on the others. Not ceremonial. Not performative. Worn the way equipment is worn. The faint scar along his jaw pulled slightly when he clenched his teeth. Across the room, several species studied him the way predators evaluate unfamiliar prey. The Collegium had labeled humans Deathwelders, but the word had been sanitized over the years, reduced to a classification, stripped of meaning. To most cadets, it simply meant loud mammals with short lifespans. The Carracks didn't believe in euphemisms. They were massive even by Collegium standards, towering insected bipeds encased in layered chitin, mandibles serrated, eyes faceted and unblinking. A warrior species that still measured honor in scars and calories consumed. One of them leaned forward, joints clicking softly. "So that's it," he said, voice amplified by his translator implant. "That's the human they warned us about." Several heads turned. Ward didn't react. The Carracks continued louder now. "He doesn't even have claws." A ripple of alien laughter spread, hissing, churring, clicking. Even a few species that prided themselves on diplomacy couldn't hide their amusement. The Cephalon instructor floated at the front of the hall, a translucent intelligence housed in a halo of light and data streams. It began its lecture without acknowledging the distraction. "Today's topic is proportional response during asymmetric engagements," it intoned. "History shows that uncontrolled escalation often results from." "I heard," another Carrack said, scraping a talon against the deck, "that humans shatter if you hit them right." Ward's jaw tightened. "I heard," a third added, leaning closer, acidic breath fogging the air, "they scream when their skin tears." That did it. Not anger. Not fear. Memory. Ward exhaled through his nose and focused on the desk in front of him. On the faint scratches etched into its surface, tally marks left by some previous cadet, maybe counting days, maybe kills. He didn't look back. The shove came from behind. It wasn't meant to knock him down. Just enough force to jolt his shoulder forward, to test resistance. A dominance gesture. The kind predators used to decide whether prey fought back. Ward absorbed it, boots scraping slightly, then settled again. The laughter grew louder. The Carracks mistook restraint for confirmation. "Pathetic," one said. Ward stood. The movement was unhurried, almost lazy, but something in the room shifted anyway. Predators noticed stillness breaking. Muscles engaged. Weight redistributed. Ward turned. His eyes were level, flat, almost bored. "You've got 3 seconds," he said. The translator rendered the words perfectly, and stripped them of every warning signal. No raised volume. No aggression markers. No threat pheromones. Just information. The Carracks blinked. Then laughed. That was the moment the punch landed. Ward stepped forward, inside the alien's reach, his fist rising in a tight arc. It slammed into the soft, unarmored tissue beneath the Carrack's throat, where chitin parted just enough to allow breathing. The sound was wrong. Wet. Final. The Carracks reeled, mandibles snapping uselessly as he choked on air that wouldn't move. His massive body staggered backward, then crashed to the deck, convulsing. Silence, 1 heartbeat long. Then chaos. The second Carracks roared and swung, a backhand that could have shattered bone. Ward ducked under it, felt displaced air ripple past his scalp, then drove his elbow into the creature's knee joint. There was a sharp pop. The Carrick screamed as his leg folded sideways. Ward pivoted again. A desk tore free from the deck as another cadet, Avian, Taloned, panicking, lunged. Ward seized the edge, redirected the momentum, and smashed the desk into Aurelian's bioluminescent skull. Light flared, then went dark as the alien collapsed. Someone fired a stun burst. Ward rolled. The blast scorched the air where his head had been a second earlier. The room erupted fully now. Cadets surged forward or fled, instincts overriding doctrine. Horns lowered. Claws flashed. Spines flared. Ward moved like he'd been here before. Because he had. He ducked under a lunging of rocks and twisted its wrist until cartilage failed, sending the creature howling to the floor. He headbutted another Carrick square in the faceplate, denting chitin and splitting his own forehead without slowing. Blood sprayed, red, blue, violet, slicking the deck. A smaller species leapt for his back. Ward caught it midair and slammed it into the floor hard enough to crack the deck plating. 10 aliens went down. Some unconscious. Some screaming. One didn't move at all. The cephalon shrieked for order, its voice fracturing as alarms began to howl. Security barriers slammed into place. Armed response teams poured in, weapons raised, stun fields humming. "Down!" someone shouted. Ward stood alone in the center of the wreckage, chest rising steadily, knuckles split, uniform torn and stained. He slowly raised his hands, palms open. "Self-defense," he said. No one argued. They were too busy staring at the floor. At the bodies. At the realization creeping through their minds like frost. Because this wasn't a riot. It was a demonstration. And somewhere, deep in the Collegium's sealed archives, an ancient warning protocol, one written after humanity's first, blood-soaked contact, quietly activated. The galaxy had just failed its first test. And the human hadn't even broken a sweat. The Collegium tried to bury it. They always did. No official broadcast. No news bulletins. Injured cadets quietly ferried to medical spires. The dead Carricks? Classified as a training accident. No one mentioned it to the press. No one mentioned it to the public. The archives purged what they could, but Ward knew better. The galaxy never forgets when a human hits first, and hits hard. Ward sat in a holding cell that could stop a tank round and politely called administrative review. Walls hummed with vibration dampeners. The light was clinical. The air smelled of ozone and sterile metal. He rested his back against the wall, hands folded over his chest, eyes closed. He'd been in worse cells, on worse planets, in worse wars. The silence was unfamiliar, though. Too quiet for a man who had survived orbital bombardments, ambushes in asteroid belts, and insurgencies where civilians were collateral damage in practice drills. Outside, the galaxy was losing its mind. Carrick's ambassadors screamed in a dozen languages, their translators failing to flatten rage into coherent threats. Relians demanded the immediate expulsion of all humans. The Cephalon Council sent calm messages about procedure, protocol, and patience while they ran simulations that already concluded what they feared. A single human could dismantle any of their theories about proportional engagement. Humans weren't supposed to do that. Not in public. Not unaugmented. Not in numbers so outmatched that the scenario should have been suicide. But that was exactly what made Ward's actions terrifying. He was escorted to the tribunal, a floating cephalon presiding, 2 organic observers taking notes, and a human liaison who looked like he hadn't slept in a month. "You violated Collegium conduct," the lead cephalon intoned, lights pulsing in patterns meant to convey authority. "I was assaulted," Ward replied calmly, almost conversational. "Your response was disproportionate." Ward smiled faintly. Not sarcastic, not cruel. Just human. "That's what you call surviving." They played the footage. Multiple angles. Slow motion. Every strike analyzed. Every fall catalogued. Biomechanical data overlays highlighted the efficiency of each motion. "This technique," One observer muttered, voice tight. It's not from any academy curriculum. No, Ward said, leaning forward. It's old. How old? Human. A pause. Then the human liaison cleared his throat. Cadet Ward is former Terran Marine Corps, he said quietly. 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. Retired after the Hadean border actions. The room froze. The Hadean border actions were classified. Officially, they never happened. But every observer knew. Every seasoned alien officer had heard rumors, whispers of battles where humans had survived orbital glassing, ambushes in planetary cores, and boarding actions that left entire fleets broken. Why is he here? Demanded one of the observers. Ward answered before the liaison could. Because Earth wanted to see if the galaxy learned anything. Silence. The cephalon's glow dimmed. Explain. You all think humans fight like we negotiate, he said, gesturing broadly at the wrecked hall now visible on the monitors. Loud. Messy. Emotional. You think we're barely holding back chaos. He tapped the table with a knuckle. This is restraint. One of the observers bristled. 10 cadets were incapacitated. Ward nodded. I could have left 30 dead. At that moment, alarms rang again, not simulation alerts, not security warnings. Real ones. A deep, resonating pulse through the station. Unauthorized transmissions flooded the chamber. Carrick's war banners flickered across holographic feeds. This is a declaration, boomed a voice thick with rage. The death of our broodling will be answered. The human cadet will be surrendered. Or your collegium will burn. The cephalon circuits flickered, almost like a shudder. The human liaison swallowed. Ward exhaled slowly. Yeah, he muttered. There it is. They didn't wait for a reply. Because the galaxy had just realized that the human wasn't just a cadet. He was a spark. And sparks, in the wrong hands, could burn entire empires. The Carricks didn't negotiate. They couldn't. Their bloodlines demanded vengeance, and their honor code defined weakness as failure to strike first. Within 6 hours, the first dreadnoughts entered the system. Heavy cruisers, boarding torpedoes, and siege platforms moved into position like a predator circling prey. Not enough to conquer the Collegium, but more than enough to incinerate the station if provoked. The Collegium panicked. Evacuation orders collided with mobilization protocols. Teachers became commanders by default, none of them trained for real war, all of them trained for lectures. Diplomats scrambled for treaties. Observers argued over jurisdiction. Protocols froze. Defense grids powered up, then hesitated. They were brilliant at bureaucracy. Useless at survival. Ward, escorted to a command spire overlooking the void, did not panic. He studied the incoming fleet. The human liaison beside him paled. Earth is 30 hours out, the liaison said quietly. If they come at all. Ward's eyes tracked the Carrick ships, each a menace of reinforced alloy, kinetic cannons, and boarding drones. They'll come, he said simply. The first boarding torpedo struck the outer ring. Ward moved before anyone could stop him. He disarmed 2 guards, gentle, precise, no one injured, and keyed into the station's defense console. Stop him! Someone shouted. Too late. Human fingers danced across the interface, entering sequences that made alien technicians whimper. Code rewritten in milliseconds. Safety locks disabled. Targeting protocols inverted. The station's ancient guns, designed to deter small-scale threats, recalibrated and fired. The first Carrick's cruiser lost its engines in a flash of orange fire. The second tore in half like paper under a blade. The third tried to retreat. Ward locked it down. You don't get to walk away, he whispered. The Collegium erupted in panic. Cephalons screamed for containment, but Ward ignored them. Power rerouted, shields flared, turrets rotated with deadly precision. No one else understood. They weren't human. They couldn't. Then came Earth. Not a fleet, not a display, just a single line of Terran warships dropping from FTL into the system, hulls scarred, guns already trained. Calm, measured, terrifying. "This is Admiral Reyes of the Terran Expeditionary Force." Her voice boomed through unfiltered channels. "You attacked a neutral academy. You threatened one of ours." A Carrick's flagship attempted to respond. Reyes didn't allow it. "Bad math," she said. The first strike hit. The Carricks retaliated with fighters and plasma lances aimed at civilian habitats, but Ward had anticipated it. He rerouted station power to counter lance energy, neutralizing strikes with surgical precision. Boarding drones slammed against repurposed turrets, shredded in seconds. By the time the Carricks realized their mistake, half their fleet was gone, and their flagship was crippled. The Collegium stared. Security teams gawked. Diplomats screamed. Ward stood in the command spire, chest rising steadily, hair matted with sweat. He didn't move to gloat. He didn't even smile. He keyed the calm one last time. "You just learned a hard lesson," he said softly. The Carricks retreated. Not defeated completely. Not destroyed. But humiliated. Their fleet limped away, screaming for reinforcements that would never arrive in time. The galaxy had just witnessed what happens when it underestimates humans. Humans didn't negotiate in the way anyone expected. Humans didn't fight with honor the way they understood it. Humans adapted, improvised, and survived. And when humans fought back, they fought to end the problem, not prolong it. The Collegium's floating lights flickered, struggling to process what had happened. The damage was extensive. But one thing was clear. The student at the center of it all, Elias Ward, was no longer just a cadet. He was a message. And the message was terrifyingly clear. Never underestimate humanity. They never expelled Elias Ward. They couldn't. The official statement cited extraordinary circumstances and shared culpability. The unofficial reality was simpler. The Collegium had underestimated a species that turned classrooms into battlefields, and their textbooks had just been rewritten in blood. Ward returned to class a week later. The desks had been replaced, floors scrubbed, and holographic banners now rotated to include human victories. Ugly, decisive, costly, and terrifying. Students sat quietly. Species that had once sneered now watched him with wide eyes, calculating every step before daring a word. No one sat near him. That suited Ward perfectly. A Carrick-shaped scar remained on the deck where the first cadet fell. The Collegium left it untouched. A monument. A warning. The Cephalon resumed its lecture on proportional response. Ward listened. Even took notes. Not because he needed them, but because humans had a habit of learning even in peace. The galaxy, however, had already learned. Emissaries quietly updated threat assessments. Fleets were rerouted. Strategies revised. Treaties rewritten. Alien politicians muttered behind closed doors about humans and their unpredictability, while military analysts argued about whether a species that survived orbital glassing, planetary insurgencies, and border wars should even be allowed in schools. Ward wasn't a hero. Not officially. Not in the eyes of the Collegium. But in the whispers, in the fear simmering across 1,000 star systems, he became a symbol. A reminder that humanity didn't play by the same rules. Humanity survived. Humanity adapted. Humanity struck when least expected, and won. A week later, Ward walked the halls with the same calm demeanor he had the day the galaxy blinked first. Cadets now cleared a wide path around him. Some species muttered under their breaths about sending complaints to their governments. Some simply stared. A new student, avian, nervous, freshly arrived, whispered, "Is it true? Did he really?" Ward's eyes flicked toward him, expression unreadable. "Yeah," he said softly. "It's true. And if you ever need to survive this place, remember one thing: calm hands, sharp mind, and never, ever, underestimate a human." The galaxy outside the Collegium walls would continue to quiver. Plans would change. Empires would hesitate. War councils would argue endlessly over what to do about a single cadet who had survived, thrived, and reminded them of the one truth they refused to acknowledge. Humans were not just a species to be catalogued. Humans were inevitable. The doors to the lecture hall opened. Ward stepped forward, boots echoing against the reinforced floor. The cadet council looked away. The instructors paused. Even the holographic stars above seemed to dim slightly, acknowledging his presence. And somewhere, far beyond the station, fleets recalculated their approach vectors. Ambassadors reconsidered treaty language. Military strategists muttered darkly about human unpredictability. Humanity had arrived, not with fanfare, not with diplomacy, but with certainty. And the galaxy would never look at a classroom, or a human, quite the same way again. Because the scariest thing in the room isn't always the largest, the strongest, or the fastest. Sometimes it's the one who stands calm, surveys the chaos, and simply asks you to sit down before he stands up. And when he does, the universe learns the hard way what humans are capable of.